Now, we've been, busy in addition to those candidate forums, which have taken, a bit of time. We've also been busy working on different voting initiatives. And a shout out here to Elizabeth, who has really been busy, not only arranging opportunities for all of us to participate in, but also supporting a myriad of other community organizations, providing them materials and coaching them, training them for their voter education efforts. We've been involved with other advocacy groups. We've done drive-by registration events at churches and local Ys. We've done in-person registration at shelters, phone banking, texting reminders to voters, speaking to groups who need information on voting, and working with the schools on how high schoolers can get registered and involved as well. It's been busy. It's interesting that there are so many opportunities that we can get involved with, whether you can be out remotely, whether you can be out in person or remotely. It's been an engaging year for sure. But enough about us. Tonight, we gathered to hear from another great Columbus organization. The Columbus Urban League delivers 19 different consumer-based programs that provide early childhood, primary, secondary, adult education, workforce development, career services, housing support services, community outreach to special populations in Central Ohio. And we are fortunate enough tonight to have joining us the CEO for the Columbus Urban League. In 2011, Stephanie Hightower became the first female president and CEO of the Urban League in Columbus. She is one of the greatest student athletes at Ohio State, undefeated in Big Ten championships for 4 years. She's had many positions in the governing bodies for track and field, was a women's team manager at the Olympics in 2004. She's held leadership positions in public education, in higher education, in government affairs, as well as the not-for-profit service arena. Stephanie's involved in a large number of civic boards, committees, and commissions in Columbus and Franklin County. We're fortunate to have her with us tonight to discuss Voting 2020, challenges and opportunities. She's very graciously agreed to answer questions as well. And so if you do have questions for her, if you would put those in the chat box, then we will read those out and talk with her after we hear a few words from her. So Ms. Hightower, the floor, or well, the little Zoom picture is yours.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you to the members and to this just historic group of women who have been in the forefront as it relates to how this democracy in this country works, who have been leaders. You have done more probably for, democracy than probably a lot of organizations. So this is an honor and a pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with you. And especially when, earlier in the year, we celebrated this summer, 100 years of women's suffrage. And you think about the fact that, even though 100 years ago, certain groups of women were able to vote, but, it wasn't until about, 25 years later before Asian American women were able to vote. And then it was another 50 years later before Native American women were able to vote. And then even longer, not until the 60s, late 60s, when African American women were able to vote. And so, it just really goes to speak to a lot of the still inequalities that still exist in our country, but having organizations like this one who get it, it's always, it does my heart good to have an opportunity to not really come and preach to the choir because you get it, but to also just to validate the work that we're doing. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. Barbara, I think you pretty much talked a little bit about the Urban League. We are 102 years old here in Columbus. We are a part of a national network of over 93 affiliates across the country. We basically have been in the forefront for over 100 years. Really the oldest civil rights organization in Columbus, Ohio, and really looking at racial inequalities and equities. And primarily, and we unapologetically, we focus our work on African Americans and disenfranchised individuals. The Urban League movement began during the Jim Crow South when Black people were moving from Jim Crow South up north, Midwest, up the East Coast and the West Coast. And they were coming to basically find jobs, to get better educated, to be able to find adequate housing, and then to also, get the kind of health care that they needed. And what is unfortunate is that 102 years later, the Urban League is needed just as much now as it was needed back then when the Urban League movement was started. And so, our core values really center around, equity and justice, high performance. We believe in innovation and integrity, but really we're about how do we empower those individuals who do not feel empowered? How do we maintain hope for those individuals who don't understand what hope really is all about, or who don't feel like there's any hope? And so, as Barbara said, we have the privilege of being able to deliver over 18 different client-facing services that COVID has really made us have to innovate a little bit differently to continue to deliver those services. But right now, we're really, really concentrating on those social justice issues, especially looking at the criminal justice system. Policing and police reform is high on our list of priorities today. Housing stabilization and affordable housing is a big item that's on that's now in our portfolio. COVID, as you know, has exacerbated the inequalities that already existed for Black people in this country. And so now that they've been uncovered, and with this pandemic, we have a lot more work to do. We are concentrating a lot right now and had to pivot to really make sure that small businesses and entrepreneurs, Black and brown entrepreneurs, are able to maintain their businesses, because we know that small businesses are the heartbeat of this country. And so how do we make sure that those already disenfranchised business owners do not go under during the pandemic? We want all small businesses to succeed, but again, we're really concentrating on those Black and brown businesses who already need our help. Education is a big piece of our work. We know that the digital divide right now is continuing to exacerbate, especially urban children and Black children, exacerbating their already the dysfunction of our urban schools, urban school districts. And so, how do we make sure that these young people can work remotely and learn from home, who do not have the adequate technology in order to learn? That's one of the reasons why I'm here in my office and not at home, because I do live in an urban neighborhood. And if I didn't stay here, the Wi-Fi would probably go out 2 or 3 times, and then we wouldn't be able to continue this conversation. Early childhood education is extremely important to us. So we are one of the Head Start providers here in the city of Columbus. And then we also deal with African-American men. We have an African-American male initiative. I Am My Brother's Keeper program that we have about 150 young Black boys ages 10 to 18 that we try to service to make sure that they have resources and the educational needs that they, educational resources they need to be able to be successful. We concentrate a lot on restored citizens. That is also one of those areas. We know that is so vitally important. And as we talk about voter registration, the good thing here in Ohio is that ex-offenders can vote. And so what we've got to make sure is that they know that they can vote. And so that we make sure that the misinformation out there that they cannot vote is we have to make sure that they understand that they can vote. We also try to make sure those ex-offenders are able to go to work. And so how do we help them to transition back into the community? And so it's not about a minimum wage job, but we have to make sure that people have jobs that will make sure that they can take care of their families. And so workforce development and economic development is also one of the pillars that we concentrate on, making sure that we have apprenticeship programs, as well as we make sure that people have those jobs that, again, are livable wage jobs so that they can take care of their families. And then under the housing stabilization piece, we know, and as you know, with the court systems and what was happening with evictions during the COVID period, we had to pivot. And so we had a lot of very generous private sector companies who stepped up so that we could help people to stay in their homes. We didn't want to flood, or we wanted to help not flood the homeless shelter system. And so when you had families who, maybe the single parent who was working, who was laid off or furloughed because of COVID, and who then were on the eviction list, we worked very hard to make sure that we were able to provide resources for those families so that they would not flood the shelter system. But we know that, now that the second stimulus package was not put into place, that there's going to be, with over 50 million people still out of work in this country, that we're probably still going to be having a housing crisis because there isn't affordable housing in this community that's needed for folks in our community. And then lastly, we do have a youth program, which is really important. And I'm curious to hear more, Mary, about what you're doing with those young people in school with voting. We know that, because of a lot of the school districts not opening up because of COVID, we are really concentrating our efforts on learning pods, after school programming for those kids who have maybe been at home all day, but then their parents have some place to send them, after 3 o'clock while they're still at working, so that we can supplement what's going on with education for our young people here in Franklin County. So that's not just Columbus Public Schools, but for all of those young people who are disadvantaged or disenfranchised or marginalized, that they can continue their education in a productive way. So as you see, we have our hands full, but we welcome the challenge because that is what we're built to do here at the Columbus Urban League. And so, the thing right now that we wanted to talk about tonight was, what are we doing right now as it relates to voter registration? And so the National Urban League has put together a program, voter campaign called Reclaim Your Vote. And basically it's 5 steps for people to take a look at when they're thinking about voting. And our message is, we want to make sure that people are registered to vote. And so we are doing, such as right now, we have a campaign going on. We are going to all of the, or not all of them, but we have selected senior citizen facilities where we are actually going in, getting them registered to vote, helping them with their absentee ballot. We have had sponsors and people who are willing to provide stamps so we can get those mailed out. So that's one of our ways for us to make sure that people get registered to vote. We want people to check their voting options. Can they do it early? Can they do their mail-in ballots? So it's really about education, which is a lot of what you guys do, to say, hey, here's your options to being able to vote. We're helping people to identify when we go into these places. Where is your polling station? You got to know where your polling location is. You wouldn't believe how many people might have a polling station right around the corner from them, but may not know exactly where they should go to actually cast their vote. And then, as you said earlier, Barbara, this is about knowing the candidates and knowing the issues. And those down ballot issues we know we need to concentrate on, as well as the big ballot issues, especially the presidential election. And then we're just going to really hit it hard, vote, vote, vote. And so we're hoping starting this Friday that we're going to be working with Radio One. We've had a lot of success. We did this during the COVID period with just going old-fashioned radio. And we know people, especially being, the shelter in place or being at home, people are listening to their radios. And so they're looking at all three of their stations, the urban station, their jazz station, their religious station, is joining with us to do voter registration, to get people out to vote, to do a candidates night, 2 candidates forums, to make sure that there is social media campaign, which we know is huge with the young folks. How do we make sure the social media campaign is strong in the Black community? And at the end of the day, we just want people to exercise their right to vote and reclaim their vote to protest. And we're talking about, this should be about from protest to power. That's what this is at. Let's not just go in the streets and protest the injustices that we see, but how do we now take that and use that power? And that power is to vote. So that's where we're at the Columbus Urban League right now, Ms. Barbara and Mary. I know that was a mouthful, but I like the dialogue with folks, so I am opening it up for questions.
Actually, I think what we're going to do, Stephanie, I know I was thinking that we'd take questions directly with you, but let's have Mary tell us about her youth voter empowerment program and then kind of combine everything together.
Great.
So, Mary, if you're available, and you're on mute right now, by the way.
Great. I am very impressed, Stephanie, of all the things you're juggling over there. And they all are highly important, especially to our community. And, children have always been my passion. And to hear that you have something for them outside of school or something for them to do, I think it's huge right now because they don't understand, but they are survivors. I used to live right there in that neighborhood. So I think that's good. But I want to share a little bit about what we're doing with the League of Women Voters. The program I'm engaged with has to do with the young voters. And just a little background, most of us are aware of the amount of young people. When I say young, I'm talking about 18 to 29 years of age. How many of them came out in the 2008 voting cycle? And some even say that that had an impact on the winner that year. But there was a huge push. And then after 2008, things dropped down for young people. The numbers really withdrew and declined. And so the League of Women Voters engaged CIRCLE, which is the Center for Information and Research and Engagement, to develop a program that target young voters. And they pilot a program for a couple years, but what they discovered was that a lot of young voters didn't vote because they didn't know who to vote for, they weren't registered, they just basically didn't have it in their vocabulary, and they also learned that most of their households did not engage in voting as well. So the League came up with a program, and it's titled Empowering the Voters of Tomorrow, and decided to target high schools because most kids, students who go to college is going to run into some type of voter information session, voter registration drive. They'll come in contact with voting, but those who don't most likely won't. And so they decided, well, let's get them before they leave high school. So they came up with this program and pushed it out. It's a program that's done all across the nation. Right now, our program, I think, is the only one in Ohio that the league pushes out that I know of. But what we do is we go into high schools and we cover Franklin County, Southwestern School District, Whitehall School District, Columbus City School District, Reynoldsburg. We'll go anywhere for the most part. But what we do is we go into high schools and we provide a 55-minute presentation. It's interactive, and I think the teachers and the students really enjoy it. But what we go in, and the first thing we talk about is why vote. And there's some videos that we play to capture the attention of the students, but it also highlights the reason why they don't vote or should vote. And then we do a demonstration that demonstrates about a third of them actually do vote that is eligible to vote in that age group. And when we let them know that a third of their population is deciding for all of them, their ears wake up. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, I can decide for myself, and the discussions take place. And by the time we leave there, those who are eligible to register to vote will register to vote. Those that are not, we will provide voter registration applications information for them to take, because most of them know someone that is eligible. And then we also last year started giving out, it's a card that we ask them to take home to their parents or guardians that ask them to check, make sure you're still on the voting rolls. Do you know where to go? And I'm saying this, here's my commercial. Vote411.org gives you all the information you need when it comes to voting. So we've been pushing that out with young people. Tell them, just pick up your phone, type in Google Vote 411, the League of Women Voters national website will come up. All you have to do is put your address in. Once you put that in, it tailors down to the information that you need to know. You can find where your polling place, whether or not you're registered to vote. More importantly, most of you are familiar with the Voter Information Bulletin. We call it VIB. But the league puts this out, typically publishes it in the Dispatch before an election cycle. It's a survey that we put out there to candidates that's running, and if they reply, their response is there, as well as pros and cons on issues. So it's the information that students often say, young people say, I don't have the information. Well, here's the information, and then they're equipped to go vote. Recently, we've had to incorporate teaching them how to vote, because we were cut off in March of this year, and we realized our presentations reviewed the value of voting, what voting meant to them. We bought voting machines in so that they could test the voting machines, but we never talked about how to cast that vote. So we had to quickly come up in our Get Out to Vote activities to help students decide how to vote. But this program's been, I think it's been well received. Just between January and March of this year, we were able to register about 500 students to participate in the primary election. Of course, we've been doing this since for the past 3 years. So we have students registered and are participating in voting. And 2 weeks ago, we distributed voting registration information packets to almost 1,200 Columbus City high school students. And in those packets, it gives them a voter registration application, an absentee ballot request, instructions, materials, information, and then that card to give to mom, to have mom or dad check to see if their voting status is ready for them to go cast their vote. We believe, the league believes that young people are important and they are the future. If you look at numbers right now, if I could put up a graph, you have the millennials, you have the Gen Z, you have the baby boomers, you have the older population. If you look at the chart, young people have the numbers right now to determine an election. It's just they don't know. But each year that numbers grow more and more. And I would say probably within the next 8 years, they will be deciding who's in those offices. So our program aims to educate them, inspire them, and transition them into long life voters. Is this a good time for questions?
Thank you so much, Mary, and I'm sorry, I was on mute. Anyway, yes, I think this is a good time for questions. This would be a great time. If you have a question, put it in the chat box, and I'm going to ask Kitty Bertu if she would moderate the discussion for us this evening. So Kitty, if you could unmute and
Okay, I'm unmuted.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. I don't see any questions in the chat room yet.
We had them filtered just to me. So someone asked a question, does Columbus Urban League focus on specific areas? And do you do door-to-door contacts?
So yes, we are doing door to door. And so right now, because I made sure they gave me the list. But right now, we're going to be doing Fieldstone Court. We're doing activities, senior activity places right now. So that's about 66 units. Then we have a team that's going to Hamilton Crossing in Whitehall, about 66 units. Then we're going to Elam Manor. That's about 98 units. Then we're going to Eastway Village, and that's another 98 units. So we're doing those right now. And then this weekend, we will be doing door to door. You can't see these, but we have these door stoppers that said 5 steps to reclaim your vote. And so we will be putting these on doors. This weekend, the National Urban League has sent those down to us. And then what we're also doing is when we go to these senior facilities, we are giving them T-shirts for them. And then we're also giving people these masks, reclaim your vote, for people to be able to. So we know that's a lot of just promotional material, but a lot of people like that with the T-shirts and that. And it does send a big message out there for people once they register to vote, and then for other people to want to get one of those T-shirts or masks as well.
Thank you. Elizabeth, do you have more questions?
I have another one here. It says, among all the great programs at Columbus Urban League and at the League, what do you see as top priorities and most effective for getting the vote out for this election?
Well, the top priorities right now are the housing stabilization program. So what's nice is, just to give you some context of why the housing need is so great. So when COVID first hit, in the first 2 weeks, and especially when the eviction courts closed and they knew they were going to evictions, in one day we had over 3,000 calls. And so what that has done is, for all of the people, we've had over 10,000 calls since March that come in for housing assistance. What that has also done is it's given us the opportunity. Now we have these people on our list and our rolls. And so as we begin to look at our campaign materials and getting out, these are going to be the people that we are going to target when they come in for programming, when they come in to pick up a check, if they come in for a housing list. Now we have these people and we've got the volume that's coming into the building to be able to get people to register or to even start talking about how we can empower them to get their vote. So that's been, it's been one of those things I tell people all the time, never let don't never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So since we're going to be in crises, we might as well take advantage of it. And so when we're getting that level of volume, the traffic that we have coming into our website, all of this information is being put there. People come in the doors. The nice thing also is we now have, we are our sharing space, or the Breathing Association is now sharing some of our space here. And so those clients also get access to that information as well.
Okay. Other questions, Elizabeth?
Yes. How can we reach people who have never voted and don't understand how the government works?
You know, that's a great question, and it's right now. That's why we're hoping to launch this radio campaign. You know, when we started, when COVID hit, Mayor Michael Coleman was on we have a call with we usually have it started with about 150 African-American civic leaders. We do a weekly call on Thursdays. We usually have now anywhere from 60 to 70 people that get on every week. And so one of the weeks we had Congresswoman Beatty and Mayor Coleman on, and Mayor Coleman said, you know, we got to figure out how do we educate people about this virus, because you had all the misinformation, especially in the Black community, about, is this a hoax? We don't need to wear a mask, even though we know that from a health disparity standpoint, we were going to be the community that was going to be hit the hardest. And so that's when he said, let's go back to old school tactics and let's get on the radio. And that's what we did. And the participation level just spiked for Radio One. They shut down all 3 of their stations for an hour every, what was it, every Monday or Tuesday? I can't remember. I was just, all the days are blended. But the numbers that we were able to reach, the people that were listening, people that, you know, I would never think might be listening, but folks would either dial in. We also made sure there was a social media page so people could then go back and listen to it. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to use the radio, and a lot of my colleagues in some of the other cities like Atlanta and in New York, they are doing the same thing. Radio is that place where we know we can educate people. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We do 2 voter information sessions where we'll just do an hour, and we're going to talk and let people know, you know, like we had talked about earlier, if you're an ex-offender, you can vote. Here's what you need to do. So we're getting ready to start hitting it hard starting this Friday, because we want to try to get as many people registered before October the 5th.
Are you sensing a real excitement and enthusiasm about voting this year? Or
you know what, Miss Kitty, I think there's a sense of urgency, and there are a lot of Black leaders now, as well as I know people in the faith-based community that are starting to having real conversations about why it's important to vote. I think to, you know, Mary's point earlier about young people, what you see happening right down in Louisville right now, you know, that's because of bad, you know, policy, bad policing, and bad prosecution. And so we know that this next generation, they don't want to see this on their watch. And that's what we're hearing. And so I think this is going to be the motivation to get not only young Black voters out, but just young voters out, period, the end, to be able to begin to address this issue of systemic racism, because they don't want it on their watch. And, you know, the unfortunate part is that we all saw George Floyd being murdered on TV, and that was an awakening for this country and the world. And I just believe that this next generation of young people, they do not want to see this, and I think that will be their motivation.
Elizabeth, do you have more?
Yes. How can we reach African American men and empower them to take back their votes and vote?
So, you know, that's an interesting question. You know, when you have situations such as George Floyd happening, when you continue to have Black men, not only George Ford and Ahmaud Arbery and then Breonna Taylor, when you continue to see these injustices, I believe that Black men are coming together and we are all saying enough is enough. And, you know, I have a 29-year-old, you know, son. And for women, it's me talking to him about, you know, I don't want to get that telephone call. You know, I don't want to get that telephone call. And so what I need for you to do is I need for you and your friends to vote. And you need to start paying attention. And I think more and more young people, Black men are paying attention. I have my Brother's Keeper program, and so we talk to them about policing and how to respond to police if they get stopped, or if, you know, most of them, they're probably not driving, but even, you know, walking while Black anymore, it can be, is considered a crime in some places. And so I believe that the motivation of seeing how Black men are treated in this country, and Black men and women, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which is not a militia, which is not a terrorist group. I think that because people are now, and when you see what's happening with the NBA, and you see what's happening with the NFL, and even with Major League Baseball and soccer, when you now have these sports icons who are using their voices, I believe that Black men now are feeling more empowered, but there's still the fear of, you know, if I, you know, driving while Black could get me killed. And so, you know, it's how do you balance that out with them? And so what we're saying to them is reclaim your vote and reclaim your power and go and vote.
Another question was, there's been a campaign using barbers to encourage registration. What about other professions doing the same thing? Have you heard of others?
Well, you know, I think some of the small businesses that can open are probably doing the same, but you know what, you know, a lot of times what white folks don't realize is the barbershop and the beauty shop is where you get all your information anyway, you know, in the Black community. And so, and because, you know, churches aren't in right now, and that would have been the other form of how you get your information. But because a lot of people are not holding services, it's really hard to get that. So, you know, barber and beauty shops, you know, even Nancy Pelosi got in trouble, everybody's gonna go get their hair done sooner or later after that pandemic. We're gonna sneak, and we don't do nothing else. We're gonna sneak and get our hair done. We're gonna get our nails done. We're gonna get me and my son, we fell out because one day he was coming to get he lives in the carriage house. He was coming over to get one of my high top chairs and take it to his apartment. And I said, well, where are you going? And he said, my barber's coming over. There's a pandemic. Well, we're going outside, Mom. No. So now you're quarantined from the house for 14 days. You can't come in my house because I don't know where your barber's been. So trust me, Black folks are gonna get their hair done and they're gonna get it cut. And that's just a great opportunity for those barbers to be able to use them in the voter campaign and registration.
Another question is, talk more about your programs that teach people to maintain hope.
Well, that's you know what, that's really all of our programs. You know, when you have people who are, you know, that come from generational poverty and, you know, never have had anyone in the household who works, being able to, and the biggest one, and I'll just share with you, is our financial literacy program. We all know now that, you know, if you don't have a decent credit score, you know, you can't find an apartment, you know, you can't get a credit card. You know, your life just, you know, sometimes even now, you know, employers are checking credit scores. And so people in the Black community, believe it or not, they want to make sure that they can be contributing members of society. So I'll share a story. I mean, our program is very culturally responsive, and we don't cut corners, and we meet people for where they're at. And it's a 6-week program, and we do everything from, you know, people that you may not know. You know, you guys probably on this call, if you went to your credit to pull your credit, you probably have maybe 3, 4, 5 pages max. When you come from generational poverty, you may have 30, 40, 50 pages because you know, for that you've got to comb through in order for us to figure out how to get your credit repaired. And so we had a woman who came to our program, and she raised her credit score to get it over 700. And so she had her daughter wanted to go to the prom. And this is a mother who is on public assistance. And she said that, you know, Mom, I need a dress to go to the prom. And, you know, the mom's like, I got 3, 4 of the kids in here. I can't afford to get a dress. You know, I just can't do it. But then she remembered that she had just finished the financial literacy program, right? And so she said, I can go get a credit card. And so for the first time in her life, she went to Macy's. And she went and she bought her daughter a dress. And that's the kind of programming that gives people hope, because now instead of her daughter being disappointed and her being disappointing the mother that she could not provide for her daughter, she was able to go to Macy's, use her credit card, get a dress, and she immediately came back and said, in the next month, when I got whatever check or income she said, I made sure that I paid that credit card off because I didn't want that interest. So those are the kinds of things that we're able to do to help people to understand that they have hope and that they actually can be empowered if we just give them, it's just the exposure of knowing that they can do it and that there are that these kinds of things are accessible. But when you come from generational poverty, you don't know those things. And so that's the kind of work that we get the privilege of being able to do, to give people that hope that they need to be contributing members of our community.
This next question's from Mary Austin Palmer, but would you be opening to partnering with the league to bring voter education to your clients and community on a quarterly basis?
Absolutely. We can get as much help as we want. So, you know, especially once we, you know, we're doing everything remotely now. So, I mean, we could incorporate that, Mary, into our 700 credit score class, to have you come in and do, you know, a presentation for a half an hour about voter registration, why it's important, education. We already got a captive audience, so absolutely, that would be pretty incredible. We should have been doing that already. We got some classes still going on, and we can fit you in right now if we need to. And the same thing would go for our classes for our restored citizens. You could come into those classes. We do a summer program for young people to get them employed, ready to earn, learn, whatever. They make up all these things. I don't know, I can't keep up the name of them. That would be a great place to come in for those high school students. So absolutely, I would welcome the opportunity to do that, Mary.
I love that. I love hearing that. I am mostly concerned with the African American men, because across the nation, their numbers are not going up as far as voter registration. And we know it's because they've been told, oh, they'll come get you for child support. Or they'll have a police officer at the polling station. They said, oh, I got warrants out. All kinds of things
That's right.
stop them.
But if we had somebody like you coming in and talking about that, and even we do the voter, we register them here. We do what we need to do as a part of their class, then, you know, we're considered a safe space for people. So, you know, I remember when I first took this job, we had somebody who had a warrant out and they came in the building and the police some kind of way had found their car was out in the parking lot. And I basically told him, this is private property, you can't be here. This is private property, whatever you think you're coming in here to do, you can't do that here. And that's the kind of thing we have to make sure that we maintain that trust and the safe space for people. Now, what happened after he left, and I know he sat there all night, I don't know if they ever came back and got him or not, but while he was sitting in this parking lot, you can't, that's my private property, you can't do that right here.
Stephanie, is he still out there? Oh,
Other questions, Elizabeth?
I think that was probably a good question to end on. We did have a few other questions, but in the interest of time, I think
That was the last question.
so I think Barb is gonna
Close it up.
close it up.
Okay, then first off, thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here tonight and for talking about the Urban League and educating us on a lot of the things that you're doing. We so appreciate that, and we appreciate the role that you're playing in the community. That's